Ciao, Bellas. Welcome to A Taboo Life, where everyone has a story to tell. I'm your host, Drew Franks, or Frank for short, and I want to thank you guys again for listening. Come check out the website, ataboolife.com, where you can read some fantastic articles, short stories, poems, because I am that sappy, and other episodes of the podcast too. A great example of which is this week's featured story titled The Uber, a modern day horror story. If you are into Quentin Tarantino movies or Stephen King type of horror, then go ahead and read this story. It's fantastic, if I say so myself, but check it out on the website ataboolife.com. Today's guest is Miss Susan Watson. She is a hypnotherapist here in Jacksonville, Florida. I had a fantastic conversation with her. We talk about what hypnotherapy is, what it isn't, the common misconceptions of it, and the benefits of it also. She is a great person to talk to, very open, and I think we can learn some interesting things from her. So here is her episode. And we're live. Alright guys, I want you to give a very warm welcome, again tongue-tied already, to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Susan Watson and I'm a hypnotherapist and my practice is affiliated hypnosis services here in Jacksonville, Florida.
Ooh, so I'm really excited about this episode. I want to learn more about hypnotherapy and hypnosis, what it is, what it's not, the woo part and the actual scientific part of it. So let's get started. First, how'd you get started in hypnotherapy?
Well, it was interesting. I've had my first hypnosis experience when I was 18, which is like over 40 years ago. And it was fascinating. And it was for weight loss. I lost 20 pounds. I thought that was pretty cool. And so then I kind of just went about my life, went off to college, did that whole thing. And then 20 years ago, while I was in college, picked up smoking cigarettes. Yeah, not a good thing. And I was smoking 2 packs a day for 25 years. And so 20 years ago, I went and I got hypnotized to quit smoking. And I walked out. It was the most amazing thing. It was really interesting when I went back to my office. At that time, I was in the financial services industry. And when I went back to my office, 2 of my coworkers were standing outside that I normally smoke with. And when I walked up to them, I had just come from my hypnosis session. And I walked up to them and I just started laughing. And they were like, "What are you laughing at?" And I said, "I don't know. I just think it's pretty funny that you're smoking." And it never bothered me after that. It was just the most amazing experience. So
it was cold turkey?
Yeah, it was like, although I will say I kept my cigarettes in the console of my vehicle, which is where I always kept them. Mm-hmm. And even when I left the hypnosis session, I opened up the console because it's those repetitive patterns. We're not even thinking. And I wasn't even thinking, and I opened it up. I took the pack out, took a cigarette out, looked at it and said, "Think I'll wait." Put it back in the console. And I did that every day for 2 weeks. And eventually I was like, these things are stale. I never smoked it. I just took it out, said, "Think I'll wait," put it back in. And then after 2 weeks, I was like, oh, these things are probably stale. So I just threw them away. I was like, yeah, no. They make them every day, so I could go and buy more if I wanted to, but I just did not have the desire. So at that point, I was like, okay, that was the coolest thing I've ever done on this planet. And so I went and studied for 4 years to become a hypnotherapist.
Ooh. So what is the training for hypnotherapy?
So there are various trainings. Mm-hmm. Some people are trained in what they call command hypnosis, like "you will not," that kind of thing. I was actually trained in Ericksonian hypnosis, which what that does is Erickson was this brilliant psychiatrist, medical doctor, and he used hypnosis with his patients and got them to make huge shifts that they'd been stuck for years. And Ericksonian hypnosis is more permissive. You might want to think about, you could, you might, and then you just give them several choices so that each individual's subconscious mind gets to choose what works best for them.
So I'm trying to get my head wrapped around that.
Yeah.
So he puts you under hypnosis,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say he gives you 3 options,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't tell you which option to take.
No, he's like, and your subconscious mind will choose the one that's best for you. Because our subconscious mind's like options, which is the difference between command hypnosis, because you're just giving them one pathway.
Yeah.
This is giving them 3, or 4, or however many it is, because that's what we're doing in a session. We're gathering information on how does this client, because everyone is different, everyone's unique.
Mm-hmm.
So how does this client process information? How does their subconscious process information? And so we're gathering information the whole time we're talking with a client. My sessions normally take an hour and a half to 2 hours, sometimes longer, but it's gathering that information to see how their subconscious processes information so that when they do get very relaxed, that information is fed back to this, no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
By definition, it's just a very relaxed state where positive suggestions are readily accepted.
Okay. And what you said there were more schools too? What's the next school after that?
So, well, the Ericksonian hypnosis, I actually then went and studied because it's built on actually neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which is
that?
the Tony Robbins world. I don't know if you're familiar with Tony
I know
Robbins.
of it, but I never really...
So the Tony Robbins world, he's actually an NLP practitioner. So it's NLP is the study of the subjective experience of excellence, meaning how does each individual experience their own excellence and tapping into that. So NLP gives you some tools and some techniques that you can use to get people to shift without them being in a completely like trance-like state. So in the session, when I'm working with clients, I'm using NLP a lot as well. So before we actually do the hypnosis, pretty much the changes have already been integrated. And then when they go into that trance, their subconscious is just assimilating all of that information. And I can be over here just talking. And when you're in hypnosis, it's like, have you ever been... really engaged in something, like you're watching a football game or something, and somebody comes up and they start talking to you and you can hear them, but you don't care what they're saying.
Yeah.
And then they're like, Frank, and you're like, what? That's what hypnosis is. They can hear me talking, but they don't care what I'm saying.
Is it, because I remember in college, is that, because I remember this, where I was learning about dissociative disorders, so like, technically we do go to dissociatives, have a little bit of dissociatism.
Right. That is a word.
Like,
yeah.
So my professor explained it this way. Let's say you're driving a car and you're just in your own world and you get to your destination and you can't remember how you got there. Is that the same?
That is exactly the same thing. And it's actually the example I use when people call me up and they're like, I don't think I can be hypnotized. So I'm like, well, have you ever been driving somewhere and you didn't remember the drive, or you drove past your exit? And they're like, oh, yeah, everybody does that. And actually they say that's a form of hypnosis. You're actually on autopilot when you're driving. Clearly, you obeyed all the traffic laws. You didn't get in a wreck because you got to where you're going. You just don't remember the drive. So that's the whole idea behind hypnosis, is just to instill this new behavior so that it's automatic and you get to where you're going, but you're engaging in this habit. So you were driving under hypnosis when you were not aware of what you were doing. So that's a classic. They say on average that we do that where we kind of zoning out, right? You just zone out. You're not even really paying attention to the drive. We do that on average 7 times a day, and we're not even really aware that we're doing it. But they say that if we did not do that, that we would literally be torn apart by the stress of this world.
Huh. Yeah, that
So it's
makes
kind of
sense.
like a reset button, or it's where you're disengaging from what's going on around you and you kind of are just on autopilot. Your conscious mind has wandered off. Probably that's what happened while you were driving.
Mhm.
You were thinking about, something else, or, an issue that you were having, and then you're just in the car driving. That's a lot of that's their best think time. But what you don't realize is that, the radio, they could be doing an advertisement or something, and then later you're like, oh, I really want whatever this is. And it's probably because you heard an advertisement for it, because you weren't really paying attention to what was being said, because your mind was distracted. You weren't even paying attention to how you were driving. The radio was going, and you're taking all these suggestions.
Hmm. So, because my take on that was that I was, well, it is a survival mechanism because the way you said it,
Mm-hmm.
but I thought it was also kind of like the brain's way of saving processing information. Let's say you focusing on like a really significant problem, and the brain's like, okay, we don't have to focus on driving this car to this exit at the moment. We can set down on pilot while we focus on this problem.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it is.
Mhm.
So that's what hypnosis is. So we're like working on the problem. You're kind of distracted. We're working on the problem. Your subconscious is paying attention. So I can kind of give you an example of that. Even when we are under anesthesia,
Mhm.
our subconscious is awake and it's taking suggestions. So I had to have a procedure done where it was just outpatient, and they just put you under and then they wake you up. And as a hypnotherapist, I was talking with the doctor and the anesthesiologist ahead of time. And I was like, I'm a hypnotherapist, and I know that when you put me out, my consciousness is asleep, but my subconscious is awake. It always has to be awake. If your subconscious goes to sleep, you're dead.
Hmm.
Because your subconscious is running your heart, is running your lungs. It's the subconscious mind is doing 6 trillion things.
The autonomous nervous system, the
Yeah,
automatic nervous system.
right, exactly. And so I said to the doctor and the anesthesiologist, I said, I know I'm going to be under, but could y'all just keep it light and positive? If you see anything during the surgery, please, just like sign language each other or something. Don't say anything until I'm fully conscious. And so they were like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, So anyway, I had the procedure done. Everything turned out to be fine. And then 3 days later, you go to the doctor to, for the follow up and all that. So it was interesting though, because, before you have a procedure, you can't eat anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I was starving. And so afterwards, I said to my mom, I was like, she was the one who drove me. And I said, I'm starving. And she's like, well, what do you want to eat? And I said, I want a cheeseburger. And she looked at me and she goes, you don't eat cheeseburgers. I said, I know, but that's what I really want. And Mom said, well, that's weird. So she got me a cheeseburger and I ate it. So 3 days later, when I went back to the doctor, we went over the, findings and everything. And he said, as I was getting ready to leave, I said, by the way, what were you guys talking about in the operating room while I was out? And he was like, oh, my God. The anesthesiologist had just been to a Jimmy Buffett concert, and all he was doing was singing Cheeseburger in Paradise. And I was like, that's what my subconscious mind picked up on. So I wanted a cheeseburger, even though I don't eat cheeseburgers. So that just goes to show you the power of your subconscious mind and how it can take a suggestion, and then you run with it. Even though I wasn't morally objecting to having, it's not like I'm vegan or anything. I wasn't morally objecting. I just don't really like fast food, cheeseburger, that kind of thing. But just that suggestion, my subconscious mind was like, yes, let's go do that. So there you go.
So what is hypnotherapy and what is not hypnotherapy?
Okay, so hypnotherapy, well, like I said, it's just a very relaxed state where positive suggestions are readily accepted, right? But for me, hypnotherapy is each person that I work with, I look at them as they are whole and complete. The only thing that is preventing them from stepping into their wholeness, expressing their purpose and their passion for life, are trapped emotions or trapped energies in their subconscious mind that are blocking them. So, for instance, I can remember working when I first got into hypnosis. So this has been really years ago, and I don't disclose any clients' names, although I do get permission from them to, tell their story. So I had this one client that she was extremely overweight, and she had been to a bariatric surgeon to do the stomach.
The stapled.
Well, she was actually getting, I think, the gastric bypass
Okay.
at that time, because back then they were still, doing those, and that's quite invasive. And so anyway, but what bariatric surgeons understand is that sometimes people aren't eating properly, and not so much, it could be what they're eating, but it's also how they're eating. And so he told this young lady, he said, you really need to get a handle on your behavior and how you're eating, because she tended to wolf food down, just like cramming it in her mouth and eating really quickly and not eating and being in that hypnotic trance when she was eating, like we're sitting in front of the TV and we're just eating, we're not even aware, oh my God, I just ate the whole bag. I mean, we've all had that experience. And so anyway, so she had come to me and we did a hypnosis session, and she left, and she was wanting to lose about 150 pounds. And so she left, and she did really great for 2 weeks. And she was doing all the right things. She was eating clean. She was drinking everything that we had discussed that she was on board with, that she felt like she could do and could accomplish. She was even taking a walk every day, because that was something that she could do. And in 2 weeks, she had lost 10 pounds. Hadn't even had the surgery yet, but just with the shift in her behavior and the choices that she was making and how she was eating, she had lost 10 pounds. But at the end of that 2 weeks, she called me. And she goes, something's wrong. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, I was doing really great. I've lost 10 pounds. And she said, but last night I was sitting there watching TV and I got this overwhelming urge to eat sweets, which had always been her problem, which was what had led her to being really overweight. So I said, well, what'd you do? She said, well, first I got into an argument with myself, like, well, you've been hypnotized and I really want to do this. But the urge, the craving was so strong that she got in her car, drove to Publix, bought the biggest package of Oreo cookies she could, and she ate those in the car on the way home.
Ooh.
I mean, she was just shoveling them in. So I said, well, let's do another session, because a lot of times we can just do, one hypnosis session because the subconscious mind learns very, very quickly. She clearly needed a little bit deeper work. So what we did was we did some work where we go in and we identify the trapped emotions in her subconscious. And I can do it with you or anyone, with you just as wide awake as you are right now.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be like, and I'm asking you questions. It's not like that. We have the ability to connect with each other's subconscious mind. So that's what part of my training is that I can connect with my client's subconscious mind. It's getting into their programming and figuring out what's going on. So when I worked with this young lady, and I told her, I said, come back in. She was sitting in that chair just as fully awake as she could be, and I'm working with her. And what came up was several emotions that were trapped and needed to be released. But the two main ones that were affecting this pattern of eating sweets was an emotion of helplessness and disgust. And both of those emotions were trapped because I can tell what age they were trapped and where in your body you're holding them. So I pointed out to her, you have these two pretty significant trapped emotions, helplessness and disgust, and those were both trapped at the age of 5. And they're in your stomach area. And she burst into tears. She had never told anyone that something really bad had happened to her when she was 5 years old, that an older child had done to her when she was 5.
Oh.
And those emotions became trapped. And I said, can I ask you a question? I said, when you went and bought those cookies and ate them, afterwards, did you feel helpless and disgusted with yourself? And she said, absolutely. So here's how that works. When something happens to us, and it doesn't even have to be anything that's traumatic.
Okay.
Our subconscious mind steps forward and goes, you're little or you're busy, even if you're older, you're busy, you got lots to do. I'll take these emotions and hold on to them for you. So your subconscious mind actually keeps a perfect recording of everything that's happened to you since the time you were conceived. And so it keeps this recording that's going. Well, when these emotions that became trapped in, especially in a traumatic situation like that, when these emotions became trapped in her subconscious, after a while, the subconscious mind is going, I don't know what I was thinking, saying I would hold on to these emotions. This is like being home with a screaming baby all day. I need you to feel some of that emotion, to let some of it out. It's kind of like taking a pot of water, putting it on the stove, putting a lid on it, and turning it on high.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't take the lid off and let some of the steam escape, it's going to boil over. Well, your subconscious mind knows this. So what happened with her, that helplessness and disgust has always been trapped since the age of 5. And after a while, her subconscious is like, I need you to feel some of this, to express some of this, to really be conscious of some of this. So what her subconscious mind did was it looked around and it goes, I know, I'll get her to eat sweets. I'll get her to eat that whole package of cookies. And then sure enough, after she ate them, she felt helpless and she felt disgusted with herself. And her subconscious mind was applauding, going, yay, some relief. I let you. But until we released those trapped emotions, it would just stuff back down, and then she'd go another period of time. Those emotions would need to be felt and expressed, so her subconscious would look around and get her to go and do something. To make her, and usually it was go and eat sweets, go get a package of cookies and eat the whole package of cookies. And this had been her pattern since the time she was 5. So until we got to that, and once we did release that, then she was able to go on and successfully make the adjustments that she needed to make to stay eating clean and healthy and drinking water. And she never had the surgery.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So it's like our minds are so powerful. I will say that one of the jobs as a hypnotherapist, it's our job to stay very much in our own energetic integrity and not try to get into the person's experience. I can read them, but it's not okay for me to jump in and say, well, this is what I think is best for you.
Oh, okay. So to clarify that, basically you try and present what's going on with them without
without making suggestions. Without making that suggestion to them, and just letting them have that process. So it's really about any really good hypnosis is really just how effective are you at asking questions. Or even teaching people tools so that they can learn how to communicate with their subconscious mind. It's because our subconscious knows what's good for us and it knows what's bad for us. And I wish I'd have known this years ago, because, I might not have gotten into this relationship with someone, or I might not have chosen to, do this particular thing. My subconscious, how we have that gut instinct? That's part of your subconscious.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people will sit there and go, well, my gut's really telling me not to do it, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. And when we blow past those red flags, tell me where I'm wrong, but it's like, it doesn't turn out too well.
No. I remember reading this article explain what subconscious or the gut feeling is, and it's your mind's way of processing information extremely fast, but you can't rationalize it.
Exactly. Well, they say there's actually a book written by a Harvard doctor. It's called The Second Brain. Our original brain was actually in our stomach. We have a brain in our stomach.
Really?
As we were evolving and growing, and I can remember my hypnosis instructor who's in Orlando, he goes, well, that sounds like all the hippies in the 60s, just a stomach sitting on a rock waiting for food to come by, because they weren't really thinking, or they were, out of it or whatever. But it was really, it's really interesting, because we have these different brains in our body. We have a brain in our stomach, which is why it knows. It's that gut instinct. It's that when something is right or wrong or good or bad, or it's best for you or not best for you. So that's that part of us. But then we have this brain that's in our head that is more of the rational, logical. When we talk about the mind is not just necessarily in the brain. The mind is in the entire body, because your conscious mind, which, by the way, is in the left hemisphere of your brain over your left eye, The conscious mind can only process 7 things plus or minus 2 at any given time. It's actually why telephone numbers are 7 digits.
Yeah.
They did psychological studies, and they said we can remember things in up to about
Chunking.
7, chunk it down, right?
Yeah.
We can remember it in chunks. That's why our social security number is 3 digits, 2 digits, 4 digits, because you can remember that. But if I were to give you a string of 42 numbers and tell you to repeat it back, you'd be like, yeah, no. So our conscious mind is, while it's brilliant and it can do all this thinking, and it's what we're sitting here interacting with each other, with people listening to us, they're interacting with their conscious mind. The subconscious mind is in the right hemisphere. And while this conscious mind is doing 7 things, the subconscious mind is doing 6 trillion. And the subconscious mind likes to do a lot of things. It loves exponential learnings. That's why hypnosis is so fast. When you think about being a hypnotherapist, it's not actually the best model, because people come in and they're one and done. It's like, okay, well, now I've got to go get new clients, right? Because that worked, so, but I love the fact that it works really quickly, because one of my patterns is that I like to work quickly. So it's a perfect mix. So that's basically how our mind is working. But the subconscious is continually sending out like emails to all of the cells in our body. It's like it's always in contact. It's always communicating with the cells of our body to let it know what's going on with the body. And we're not consciously aware of that. I mean, the subconscious is making our heart work, making our lungs work, making our hair and our nails and our skin grow. But we don't have to consciously be sitting here going, I've got to make that happen. Because if I had to make my heart work or my lungs work, I'd still be at home. I couldn't leave. I'd be like, I don't know how to do this. So the subconscious is this brilliant inner intelligence, and each person's is unique to themselves. Everyone is different. What may be good for you would not be good for another person or for me. But your subconscious mind would be like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Like I just worked with a young lady who's trying to choose between 3 universities. And so when I was working with her, there's a way that we can get to what your subconscious mind thinks of it. And it was really, really interesting that 2 of the universities, her subconscious mind was really great with those schools, but the third one, And when you're in sports, or, you want to go on and go to the Olympics or whatever it is, or go to college, like she's wanting to do, would you really want to go to a school that your subconscious didn't think was good for you?
Yeah. Not me, no.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah. No. Yeah, I know you were agreeing. Yeah, no, you don't want to do that. It's fascinating how it really puts people on their path. Many years ago, I worked with a guy, a high school senior, who was trying to decide which colleges to go to, and University of Florida was one of them. And when I talk about how we have to stay in our energetic integrity, as a Florida Gator myself, I was like, I know that's where he's going to want to go, right? And I was like, no, I have to stay out of this. And when I worked with him, it wasn't the University of Florida, and it wasn't the second school that he had a full ride scholarship to, but the third school, he was rock solid on that school. His subconscious mind was like, oh yeah. And that's ultimately the school that he went to. So it really does help you make decisions. I work with my subconscious mind. I let it decide what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to wear, who I'm going to work with. I don't work with everyone that calls me.
Really? What's the criteria for that?
Well, the criteria is just listening to my subconscious mind.
But do you know why it's like saying no? Or?
No, I don't really go that deeply, like why it's not. A lot of times it could be that, as I'm talking with the person, I'm checking in with both of our subconscious, could I help this person? And whereas, like I said, you're always wanting to get new clients because, we have to pay the bills, right? I don't want to do a disservice to anyone either if it's not a good fit. So I like talking with them. A lot of people email me, can you work with me? That kind of thing. I generally know, even from the email, yeah, I can work with that person, or no, I can't work with that person. Usually what I'll suggest is let's get on the phone and talk so that they feel comfortable with me, and that it is a good fit for them and for what it is that they're wanting to do. So it really is just I think it's just having the experience of working with people for over 20 years and just knowing, yes, I can help this person. No, I can't help this person. And if I can't, then usually, I'll refer them over to somebody else who I think that, would be a better fit for them. But in answer to your question, it's just kind of that inner knowing that, yes or no. So, and the subconscious is very, very clear on what it likes and what it doesn't like. And it's not a mandate if we're listening to our subconscious. Like if I check in with my subconscious in the morning and it's like, oh, you want to wear this? And I'm like, yeah, but I want to wear that. And the subconscious is like, yeah, but this is better. I usually go with it. But if I'm like, yeah, it's not a mandate, I don't have to do exactly what my subconscious is saying. Because again, it's only what I'm wearing. But if it was for something big, like, do I take this job? Do I marry this person? Do I date this person? Then the subconscious, I think I would listen to it.
I remember reading this book. I think it's Fast and Slow Thinking, or I forgot the name of the book, but he was talking about the conscious mind and subconscious mind, and he was talking what you just talked about making decisions. He said, yeah, there's times where you have to. Like a good example, he said, like when buying a house, that's when you're supposed to use your conscious mind or more rational thinking. That's when you take your time and like, okay, I need to buy a house that's within this area, within my price range. And you use your subconscious mind when you're picking out the paint, the color, the artwork, or any the decorations.
Right.
So he said that's the best way to differentiate between the both.
Exactly. And that's exactly right. And the conscious mind tends to be more logical, linear, time driven. The subconscious mind tends to be it's more about the emotion, the feeling. That's what the subconscious is really responding to. Our subconscious mind is a lot like a child under the age of 5. I've even heard one person describe it as it's like trying to teach a room full of 3-year-olds, which can be challenging. But our subconscious mind doesn't really understand negation.
What's negation again?
Negation, when you tell it not to do something.
Okay.
So when I first started studying hypnosis, I was kind of fascinated by it and kind of listening to people. That's the thing, is like listening. How are they talking? What are they saying? What are they reacting to? And I had actually had like a little viral thing going on, so I had to get some antibiotics. My doctor called it in to Walgreens, so I went to Walgreens to pick it up, and this woman came in with her 4-year-old little boy, and she was sick going home from work. Her doctor was calling in a prescription, so we're both kind of sitting there waiting for our prescriptions to be filled, but she had stopped and gotten her little boy a Happy Meal because he had missed lunch at daycare, and so she had to get her medication, take him home with her. And so he was sitting there, and he was like cramming the hamburger in his mouth, like stuffing his, and she kept pulling his hand down and with the hamburger in it, saying, don't stuff your mouth, don't stuff your mouth. And he kept looking at her confused, and he kept stuffing it. And I realized, oh, he's under the age of 5. He's not getting the word don't. Our subconscious mind is like that. It doesn't understand don't. It crosses out the don't. And then, so she was saying, don't stuff your mouth. His mind was crossing out the don't and heard stuff your mouth, stuff your mouth, stuff your mouth. For instance, if I told you, Frank, don't think about a white polar bear over there in that corner. You have to think about a white polar bear first before you don't think about it. So in hypnosis, what you're doing is you're just redirecting people to what they have told you in the session that they do want to think about, rather than what they don't want to think about. So when this happened with this little boy, and he's sitting there going, don't stuff your mouth. She's saying, don't stuff your mouth, don't stuff your mouth. She was about to spank him. She was going to punish him because she felt like he was being disrespectful. And I knew what was going on. I'm like, he can't process this. So I was kind of trying to explain it to her. I said, watch. I said, sweetie, can you come here and bring your hamburger? And he came over and he stood right in front of me. And I said, I'm just wondering if you can show me what little bites you can take. And he just grinned at me and took a little bite and chewed it up and swallowed it. And then he took another little bite and his mother goes, how'd you do that? I said, I asked him to do what we wanted him to do rather than what you didn't want him to do. And it's so effective for young parents or parents of young children or grandparents of young children to have that understanding. They really are not trying to be disrespectful. It's the way that their brain is processing. As they start going to school, at 5 or whatever, they'll learn the no's and the nots and the don'ts and all that. But as they're little, they really don't get it. So it's helpful to talk with people in terms of what you want them to do rather than what you don't want them to do. And that's where the command hypnosis is different than Ericksonian hypnosis, because that's what we're doing. We're giving them suggestions about, well, do this or do this or do this. You get to choose. You get to make that decision yourself. We're not sitting there going, you will never smoke again. Because then their subconscious is hearing smoke. Or if somebody comes in here and sits here and tells me, I don't want to smoke anymore. I know their subconscious is sitting there and crossing out the don't and hearing, I want to smoke. So I'm like, well, I know what you don't want to do. What do you want to do all the time? And that's where people have a challenge. A lot of people can tell you what they don't want to do, but they can't tell you what they do want to do.
All right. So what isn't hypnosis or hypnotherapy?
What is not?
Yeah, what's what's woo or what's
so
what like biggest misconceptions? What would you say? Yeah, the biggest misconceptions of hypnotherapy and what a lot of people get wrong about it.
Oh, that's a great question.
There we go. Let me rephrase it that way.
Yeah, that's a great question. So hypnosis, like I said, is a very relaxed state, but what most people, it's not controlling someone else's mind.
There we go. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, I cannot control somebody else's mind.
Not like there's no maturing in candidate situation where you're going.
Well, that being said, we can't control other people's minds. But you remember what I said about as a hypnotherapist being in energetic integrity and me staying in my own business, so to speak, rather than getting into the other person's, because I have been in meditations, hypnosis sessions or whatever, where actually what happened was the hypnotherapist kind of got out of their stance as being the hypnotherapist, and the suggestions they were making, the hypnotherapist was like, "Ooh, I like that one," and then they kind of jumped into the hypnotic trance. And you'll know that happens if you are under trance and you're seeing the hypnotherapist as you're going through your visualization or however your mind is processing that information. That's why I said it's very, very important as a hypnotherapist to stay in what I call energetic integrity, where I'm not jumping into their experience. I can connect with them. I can help them identify what's trapped, what's going on with them. But as far as me jumping into their experience, because there could conceivably be a Manchurian candidate thing that could go on.
Yeah.
Somebody could, and they don't, I'm not saying that they necessarily mean to do it. It could be subconscious on their part.
Yeah, I remember listening to another podcast. I think it was This American Life. There was a case, I think it was here in Florida, I believe. It's been a while since I listened to this episode. But the principal was, he was trained in hypnotherapy. He had his, he went through his training to get the license. And he was trying to help a couple, the students there, and some of the hypnotherapy did work. But one of the students he tried it on ended up, I'm not sure if he ended up killing someone. I think he did end up killing someone or he committed suicide. But that was a big issue about what he did.
Yeah, and that was a very familiar case many years ago. I think they actually found that the principal was not responsible, that he could, because you can't make somebody do something that they don't want to do. I mean, that because, I jokingly tell people who are very concerned about that. I was like, look, if I could tell people what, if I could control them and get them to do things they don't want to do, I'd be living in the south of France right now with everybody's money. No, I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, but it just does not work that way. I can't make people do things that they don't want to do. That's why a lot of times I'll get a call and it's like a wife calling me up going, my husband needs to quit smoking. Can you hypnotize him to quit smoking? And I'm like, okay, that's good. But how does your husband feel about it? I really need him to be the one who's calling me, not the wife, or not the significant other, or whoever it is. Because it has to be their choice. It has to be something that they're choosing to do, because we're not going to change for other people. We're just not. I mean, you can nag your spouse to make a change or whatever. You can call a hypnotist and say, I'm going to bring my husband and make him do this. It's just not going to work unless there's a part of them that wants to do it as well. And I tell people, a lot of times, on the one hand, they want to make a change. On the other hand, they don't. It's just getting their subconscious to be on board. And that's part of the talk that we have ahead of time. That's why a session takes about 2 hours. The actual hypnosis only takes about 20 to 30 minutes.
But you're doing
But the rest of the time, it's collecting information. It's releasing trapped emotions with you being fully awake. And there's nothing scary about it. I had one guy come in recently that he wanted to remember a password to an Excel spreadsheet, very important one. He couldn't remember it. And so at 20 minutes, we had the password.
Yeah, I kind of ask this question now. I was about to write it down. Are there dangers to, because I know when some therapists try to go back to see about traumatic events, they have to be careful about not what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Being putting suggestions in there. Is there a danger to that too when you kind of try to hypnotize a person to get that password or remember a traumatic event? Yeah.
So basically, the way it works is that could be traumatic if they were like deeply. Well, it could be traumatic in any situation. And my whole thing is that I don't really go and do like past life things or anything like that. I mean, I do, but it's another body of work that I do. It's not with you being in a trance.
No, I mean like false memories and
false memories and things like that. Yeah, it is very possible. That's why I tell people you want to be extremely careful about who you choose to work with, and even going on YouTube and listening to, because there's hypnosis stuff on YouTube. I don't know what they're putting in there subliminally, that's underneath, that's running underneath. There could be some suggestions that are being made because I don't know that person. I don't want to sit here and say I'm paranoid about everybody who, puts anything on YouTube or puts something online. If you don't know this person, for me, hypnotherapy is really about having that relationship and that trust with your client, so that they know that you're only wanting to do what serves their highest and best good. And anything else would just be nefarious or just not in that integrity. Because being in integrity these days is so important. It just is. It's my password these days for me. But to your point about the guy with the password, I never put him in a trance.
So how do you help him remember the password? Well,
it was really interesting because before I work with a client, I actually do some really deep meditation. I guess you could call it self-hypnosis. And we do have that ability to connect with other people. And so I was actually, during this meditation, it became very clear that it was just too heavy. It needed to be more playful. And so when he came in, this was a very, very important spreadsheet, I have to say. I mean, when I heard, what he had on there and what happened. But what was interesting was he had actually gone to his IT department at work, and they were like, yeah, we could send this out, but it's going to take about a month to break into that spreadsheet, and probably cost $5,000 to $10,000 for a programmer to spend the whole month. And so when he got in here, I was like, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. And so I just kind of went into kind of a playful mode with him, just asking him questions and like, what do you think? And he's like, oh, I use he goes, I have hundreds of passwords. Because, everything has, a lot of sites have their own unique, you have to have special characters or a letter and a number or a capital. It just depends. All these different, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I just need to kind of play with him. So I said, I know. I said, isn't it kind of crazy these days how all these different sites have all these different passwords? I said, I keep an Excel spreadsheet with all my passwords on it. But I don't lock it, because if I locked it and I forgot that password, where am I going to keep that password, right? And so he sat there and he was like, oh, he goes, well, I've kept a list on my phone, but I have like hundreds on there. And I said, well, did you try any of them to see if those were the ones to get into your spreadsheet? And he was like, yeah, I've tried a bunch of them and I couldn't get into it. So then I started then I was just asking him questions. And so it really got to be, when did you start the spreadsheet? Oh, I started it 10 years ago. When did you password protect it? Oh, that was about 4 years ago. And I was like, okay, I just want you to relax for a minute. Just really relax. Take a couple of deep breaths. Get your phone out and just scroll down. And stop when you think you're about 2015, because it was 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So he's scrolling. And I actually have his laptop with, that's got the Excel spreadsheet on it.
Mm-hmm.
I had the Excel spreadsheet up. I'm sitting here with it in my lap. He's over there with his phone and he's scrolling down. He goes, okay, I think I'm there. And I was like, okay, give me a password. He gave me one. That wasn't it. He gave me another password. That was it. And I was like, nobody thought to ask these questions, like just get into more relaxed state. Everybody went in. So it was subconscious, but it was conscious at the same time. So it wasn't anything magic. It was so interesting afterwards, because he emailed me 2 weeks later and he was like, just wanted you to know I'm still happily using my password, and hypnosis doesn't hurt. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't. It's just your inner brilliance. But really, a whole IT department didn't think to like really kind of dig in and ask those kind of questions. And it had slipped his mind. It wasn't something he was thinking about.
Yeah, like, it was also too, people don't have that mindset. Like, if you go to the IT department, they're probably busy with other tickets coming in. Then he's just overwhelmed with, man, I need to find this password. How come I can't remember the password?
Exactly. And so when people are here, it's like you really come to, hypnosis is just like coming back to your sense of peace. So when I say it's a relaxed state where positive suggestions are readily accepted, it's about where your mind is quiet, your heart is peaceful, and from there you're able to work with the subconscious mind, because it really is about coming to peace. People are so stressed out these days. They are so stressed. They are so concerned. There's so much that's going on. Life moves so fast. We're being inundated with information at incredible rates of speed. And change is constant. I mean, that's the thing. People are just looking. I just want to land somewhere. I just want to, I want everything to be okay. And that's not how this isn't how this works. Change is going to be constant. But what if you could be peaceful? What if you could be at home with yourself no matter what's going on around you?
Isn't that only reason why I know about this? Because I saw this on a Bill Murray documentary called "A Towel." Bill Murray. Isn't that wow? Is it a towel proverb about the farmer who his cow ran away, and his neighbor's like, man, this must be a bad situation. He's like, it could be good, it could be bad.
Yeah.
Next day, the cow comes back, he comes back with a herd of other cows.
Yeah.
Like, oh my! And the neighbor's like, oh my God, he got a whole bunch of cows.
And
then
that's
and he's
great.
Like, yeah, it could be good, it could be bad.
bad.
The next thing you know, his son breaks his leg because of one of the cows, and then
that could be good or bad.
And find out, like, the emperor.
And then the army comes through, and they're like recruiting people, and the son has a broken leg, so they can't take him, and that could be good or bad. Right. Yeah. It's exactly like that. And our conscious mind tends to judge. Our subconscious mind is the way it's been described is like a fallow field. It's like there's nothing there. So your subconscious mind is like, so let's just say it's just perfect fertile dirt, just ready. And you can plant a flower, or you can plant a poisonous plant. Your subconscious mind doesn't judge that. It doesn't care, whichever one you plant. But the one that you water is the one that's going to grow. So when we're talking about watering, it's the one that you're feeding with your thoughts and what you're thinking of and what you're focusing on. Because it really, to live a successful life, it is about mindset. And who would you be if you could communicate with your subconscious mind? You could ask it questions. I teach each one of my clients in here how they can communicate with their subconscious mind and ask it questions. Mm-hmm. I tell them, if you want to come back here, we can do it here too, but I'd like for you to have this tool going forward so that you can ask your subconscious mind, what do you think about this situation? What do you think about this job? I just worked with a woman up in Washington, D.C. who was looking for a new job, and clearly her subconscious mind had found a job that was not in Washington, D.C., but her family is there. I mean, her children are in school there. They love being in that area. She couldn't uproot them. And I was like, your subconscious mind really loves the idea of this new job that's not in Washington, D.C., but your subconscious mind is also telling me that it does not like the idea of uprooting. Is there any way that you could telecommute? Is there any way that you could stay there and do the work? And she was like, no, I don't know. Let me check and see. And then ultimately what ended up happening is that they worked it out where she is telecommuting and she loves the job. She loves it. So it really is an amazing tool to use to be able to understand how to communicate with your subconscious mind and to listen to it. And again, like I said, it's not a mandate. It's not like, okay, well, you have to do this because your subconscious mind said that that's the best thing. But it is good information to have going forward. And, it's like I said, like going into a relationship, like you may want to date this person. You can ask your subconscious mind that. When I was little, my grandfather used to always tell me, he goes, now, Susan, if you meet somebody that you want to date or that you want to marry, the best thing for you to do is to take them around little children, like under the age of 3, or dogs, because they will let you know. And all they're doing, all those little kids are doing, all those things that the dogs are doing. And I think I talked with you when I first met you about how they have those dogs that are therapy dogs, or service dogs that can tell when a child's about to go into an epileptic seizure, mm-hmm. or they're about to go into, an insulin issue. They need their insulin because they're severely diabetic. What that animal is doing is actually reading the subconscious energy. It's outside conscious awareness. They feel it. Children under the age of 3, they feel it. They know. And so we have that ability. We have that ability to train ourselves. That was what the idea for me going through all this training was, me being able to connect with other people's subconscious minds so that I could read them, kind of like those service dogs are reading people and going, okay, this is where I'm seeing, this is where I'm seeing a problem. Tell me where I'm wrong. This is what your subconscious is indicating. And, we'll have that discussion about that, because it really does kind of cut to the chase. And that's why hypnosis works so quickly, because we're getting to the root issue and we're addressing it. So that going forward. So for instance, when that young lady released that helplessness and disgust, her subconscious didn't have to look around to put her into a situation to make her feel those emotions anymore. They weren't there. Mm-hmm. They had been addressed. They had been released. We had let those go. And so now she was able to, go about her life and not have to worry about in the middle of the night driving to Publix to go get the biggest package of Oreo cookies that you could find, just to satisfy the subconscious mind, because it's feeling overwhelmed with all those trapped emotions. And generally speaking, in a session, when I do releasing trapped emotions with a client, they'll have about 11 or 12, and people will sit there and go, I must really be screwed up because I have all the... I'm like, no, that's pretty normal to let these go. And I've been doing this work for a long time. I still do it. I still do the work on myself. It's like, well, are there any trapped emotions, and I'll identify them and release those. So it's kind of like this constant purging. I have a client that said, everybody goes for a physical every year. I think everybody should go for a mental cleansing every year, just to get everything all cleared out and, just get rid of anything that got trapped in that year and just let it go.
Yeah, I need to go through that right now.
Yeah, well, we can do that later. That'll work.
Trying. Well, let me use a personal example.
Mm-hmm.
With someone like me, right now, and sounds kind of embarrassing. I'm having a little issue with dating at the moment.
Okay.
I'm having I'm second guessing myself a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it came from I think it stemmed from a couple of bad, well, yeah, two bad relationships, and last year I went through a bad financial crisis, and when I was dating, I told a couple of women about this, or when I went on a couple of dates, and I got rejected, and it hurt a lot.
Oh.
So now I'm back in a better place in my life, but also too, I'm still afraid.
Yeah, I totally get that. But when you were talking, I was actually, your subconscious was actually letting me know that that financial situation actually came up because of the dating situation. Because, at some point when you do find the right person, it's for richer or poorer.
Yeah.
It's not just like, hey, gimme, gimme, gimme. What are you going to do? I do get that you do have some trapped emotions around that. So does Frank have any trapped emotions around dating? Yeah. Can you hold on a second? Let me get my... Okay. All right, I just had to go and get my chart because I don't have these memorized. I purposely don't memorize these because I don't want to be led or anything. So, Frank, do you mind me asking, how old are you?
31.
You're 31. Okay. You're still in your prime, young.
Does it feel like I feel pretty worn?
I know, right? It's like, oh, okay, so you're 31, but you feel like you're 60 on the...
Yeah, well, I think the way I kind of look at it, I try to look at it sometimes from an older version of me. That, probably last year was probably one of the roughest times of my life, and I probably had to go through it to change.
Yeah, it's interesting how those things kind of happen. And just know that at some level, your subconscious is choosing everything that shows up, even the situations that you look at. You remember what you said about the farmer who said, is that good or bad? Yeah, so that financial situation, that could have been good, that could have been bad. The way I look at it...
You don't know yet until a year or two down the road.
Yeah, but the way I looked at it, it was kind of a way of weeding out the undesirable dates, the women that you were dating, because... our subconscious will do that. It's like, yeah, these are not the right people for you. So you're 31, or does Frank have any trapped emotions around dating? Yes. Do we need to know more? Yes. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be silent about this, but I'm actually just communicating with your subconscious.
Let you guys know who's not reading... who's not seeing this right now because it's just
I know,
audio.
it's not, we're just talking.
Yeah, she has her phone out looking at a chart.
Right, I'm looking at this chart because it carries all the emotions that are on there. And let's see, do we need more? When does this happen? Okay, Frank, around the age of 24, so that would have been what, about 7 years ago, and I could be off plus or minus a year. There was a feeling of panic. Where were you about 7 years ago?
Hold on, guys, I'm thinking for a moment. I'm so bad at math. Let me see what year that was.
Okay, so that would have been around 2011, 2012, 2013.
Could have been. Was it around that time?
Yeah, because this was about 7 years ago. You would have been about 24 years old. Somewhere around 23, 24, 25. There was a situation in which you felt panic. And I always tell my clients, I could be off by a year in either direction, because it can get kind of tricky. Were you
7 years ago?
Yeah.
It'll be 2012.
Were you working somewhere?
Well, 2011 is when I was, the 2011, well, 2010 to 2011 was when I was trying to become a cop. So I was working as a temp and I wasn't really making a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Then 2012 was when I was doing the police training. So at the time I was working as a cop.
Did you have a situation in that when you were becoming a police officer that you felt panic?
It's just the job in general, just some panic, but it wasn't until 2013, like the summer of 2013, there was a bad incident where was a year-long ordeal that led me to resigning because I ended up becoming a whistleblower. But it was around the summer 2013 where that ordeal started.
Oh, did you feel panic around that?
Yeah, that's when I started first getting a lot of anxiety attacks.
Yes. Okay. Well, that was the initiating situation that started that. So just know, and I'll be working with you later, but just know that us just even talking about that is being released from your subconscious mind, because the way it actually works is people, will sit there and they'll go, "Oh, this feeling. I remember that situation. I'm having this feeling." We tend to focus on the feeling, think about the feeling, and that just kind of keeps the feeling going. And then what really happens is that when we identify this emotion and we're talking about it consciously, your conscious mind is now paying attention to it and we're releasing it and letting it go. Mm-hmm. So that when we actually do the hypnosis, we're just reminding the subconscious all of the trapped emotions are released now. And now we want to, so instead of that panic, and I kind of get that it's affecting your relationships. So do you ever get kind of like after you're dating someone or you're about to date someone or when you were dating them, did you feel a little bit of panic or a little bit of anxiety around dating?
Yeah, it's, no, I honestly, it stems from rejection and also stems from...
Sure.
I always felt insecure because I didn't really never have that many relationships, and also I always feel like if a woman actually sat down and actually took the time and saw the real me, she would reject me.
Oh, so that's an interesting point of view, right?
Yeah.
Is that really true that they would?
I'm not sure anymore.
Yeah, but can you see that just having that energy around you, you're attracting people in who are going to do exactly that?
Yeah.
So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Mm-hmm. So in hypnosis, what we want to do is we want to remove that and we want to replace it with something that's better feeling. That, well, what if it is you just haven't met the right one, the one that's meant for you because of this energy that's going on around you. We want to shift that energy.
See, around that time, around 2012, I was seeing a therapist because of police work was stressful, and also we're talking about dating too. And she told me I had what she called a wrong picker. That's what she called it. It's like basically you're just picking the wrong woman.
Right, and I would totally agree with that. But what's really going on is that there's an energy in your subconscious that's keeping that, which is a thought, which is I'm not good enough, or I'm not good at this, or whatever that is, and so you're attracting in people that aren't good for you. But what if instead, what would be a better feeling thought to you than the thought that you're currently having, that you worked with that therapist on?
What do you mean?
Like, what would be a better feeling thought than, I'm not good enough, or I'm not good at this? What if we just reverse that? What if we just got rid of the I am good at this.
I'm capable.
I'm capable.
It's going to happen.
Absolutely. And look at all the work that you've been putting in. You've done a lot of these podcasts. You can walk in and when I met you, this is the first time I've ever met you. And it was like very natural, no nerves, no nothing. I mean, you've been practicing at connecting with people. You're really good at it.
Oh, thank you.
Right? So you're really good at it. And now all you have to do is just go out there. And what if you go out there and you're talking to women, but it's not so much about, oh, I want to date her. It's just, I'm making this connection. I want to know more about you. I'm going to ask you questions. And then just allow it to naturally flow from there. Because relationships are, relationships are important. They're vital. And, you are highly empathic. When I first talked with you, it was about how, this is all about having empathy and having that empathy for other people. They say that that's going to be our greatest gift going forward. And it's actually one of my top strengths. I also do some corporate work where I give people assessments so that they can see what their top strengths are. Mm-hmm. My second strength is empathy. So I can put myself into other people's situations. I can put myself in their shoes. I can feel what they're feeling. And I think you have that same ability. And probably to a very high degree, which is kind of why you kind of go into the panic. Because with people who are empathic, like you and I are, mm-hmm. They say that 98% of anything you're feeling isn't even really yours. So what if this uncomfortableness that you were feeling or this panic around the dating that you were feeling actually isn't yours, but it's the date. It's her panic.
I think a person's mine.
You think, so you're going to own it. Good for you, taking self-responsibility.
Well, I don't know, maybe it's also kind of like the culture today, too. But sometimes I find it kind of hard to actually talk to a woman. Let me rephrase this. Let's see if I find a girl attractive in a bar. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I find it hard to talk to them. Maybe it's because it's the environment. But if I get them outside and actually try to talk to them, then they're not talking.
Oh, they're not talking?
Yeah, they're not saying anything really interesting. I hate doing small talk.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's a small talk thing.
Yeah, so what if you had it in your subconscious mind that you would only attract people that you could have really meaningful conversations with deep, meaningful conversations? Because I think that's what's led you to do this. I think you love what you do. When you contacted me, I went and I looked at some of the other interviews that you were doing. I was like, this guy really loves talking to people. And so for you to sit there and go, I don't like doing small talk, I'm like, you're really good at it.
Well, this is not small talk. I hate like, okay, what's your name?
Right.
What do you think about this song? Like, no, tell me something interesting about yourself, and let's go from there.
Well, what would be, that's perfect. What if you just had a list of questions and it was like, what do you find interesting? Or what's your number one thing on your bucket list? Mm-hmm. What do you want to make sure you do before you die? What do you want to be when you grow up? Mm-hmm. Just asking those kind of questions, just asking those deep and meaningful questions. It has to be something that resonates with you, which is why I think that, in a bar that, that's not, it's going to be like, hey, what's your sign?
Yeah, that's another thing that's people keep telling me, and especially one of my professors in college, my mentor, he was a mentor and our fraternity advisor. He said, he told everyone, every class he goes to, it's like, guys, you're not going to meet a woman with a drink in your hand. Like, you're not going to meet a good woman with a drink in your hand.
Well, yeah, he might have kind of a point about that, I guess. It's not like the good, picking ground. So it's really, It really is about what I think that you've just been attracting, and your therapist was right. It was just the wrong picker. Mm-hmm. But it's actually happening in your mindset. So, getting you to shift and to pick a better feeling mindset, one that's like, I am interested in other people. I just want to know about them. And I'm an interesting person. And we can have these deep conversations. And sometimes the best conversations that you can have are really in silence. Mm-hmm. I think that you'll know when you meet the right person because you can sit there with that person and y'all don't have to say a word and you feel completely content.
It's not awkward. It's like, this is nice.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Like you're on a road trip, right? And you're not having to talk to each other, right? You just are just together. You're in that space together. And because you don't want to have to work it. I mean, you don't have to work at something hard or pulling stuff out of people or, whatever that is. You just want to be comfortable with that person. And so the idea is to get you to be in a really comfortable position so that you can talk to people. So I want to teach you something that this is really kind of
That's
fascinating.
great for anyone that's listening who's having the same issue too.
I know, right? I mean,
a lot of people out there.
Totally. I mean, social anxiety is huge. As a matter of fact, as full disclosure, in my 20s, I spent 4 years as an agoraphobic.
Really?
Yeah, I never left the house because when I would walk outside, I would have a panic attack.
What was it? Well, what triggered it?
So I went to therapy for years, right? And they were like, "Oh, it's just, it's just." They didn't even really say. We just had to do it. It was, I can't even remember what the therapist was saying. It was like, really, the thing that really helped me with it was hypnosis. Was getting to the subconscious mind, but it was also having the understanding that the reason that I was having panic attacks was because I was an empath. To the extent, so full disclosure, as an empath, and I'm also highly suggestible.
Oh, okay.
I mean, just say anything and I'm going off with it. So it was also a reason for me to learn hypnotherapy because I don't want to be going around doing that. Like, oh, why am I doing that? I was taking suggestions that were not helpful suggestions. Plus, what was actually happening was I was such an empath that when I would go outside, and so agoraphobia is like fear of the marketplace, right, or crowds. It was because I was overwhelmed because I was feeling everybody.
I was like that when I was a kid. Now I think about it.
And I think that's what's affecting you in the dating scene. So when you learn how to work with that empathy, and that when you really get that 98% of anything that you are feeling is not yours, it's going to so from now on, when you leave here, you just ask whose feeling is this? So if you start feeling something, I'll stop myself and I'll go, whose feeling is this? And if I feel lighter, it's not mine. If I feel heavy, it's my feeling. And that's the indicator. That's your body's indicator. Your subconscious is indicator to you. So you just stop and you just go. So for instance, I was working with somebody recently, and when they walked in the door, I felt so angry. I was just angry, and I actually knew it wasn't mine, but I stopped and I asked myself, whose feeling is this? And I immediately felt lighter, and I knew it was the client's. And so when they sat down, I said, you're feeling angry. And they think I'm psychic. It's not. It's just reading energy, picking up on that energy. And if you were that way as a child, you're still that way now. Children do tend to be very empathic, and it kind of gets schooled out of us by the time we start school. Now you got to focus. Now you got to do your studies. Now you got to learn how to read and write and do arithmetic and all that kind of stuff. So we're not even really paying attention to that. But I think that it's what gets people to be really overwhelmed. I work with a lot of people who are off the chart energetically sensitive. They have trouble, going out and being around people. And it's so amazing when you can work with them and show them tools, techniques, using hypnosis, but also using tools and techniques, because there's tons of them, that when they leave, like I just worked with somebody recently who's doing a lot of competitions and gets extremely nervous. And they just called me and said, I had a competition this weekend and I did not get nervous at all. And it just makes the difference, all the difference in the world. Performance anxiety, and by the way, dating, that's a performance anxiety. Getting up and doing a speech in front of people, that's a performance anxiety. Doing any kind of sports and you get worried about, how am I going to do and all that, that's a performance anxiety. It's all on how are we performing. And once you understand your subconscious mind and you can work with your subconscious mind, then what you'll find is that those situations just become completely different for you, and you are showing up and you're really enjoying the interacting. And what if you were just like focusing on, you see somebody that's attractive and you want to get to know them, and you go up to them and say, "Hi, I'm Frank, and I do a podcast called The Taboo Life, and I love talking with people and finding out what they find interesting. Would you have just a few minutes to talk with me so that I could see, maybe are you a good fit for my podcast, or I just want to get to know you?" And what if you did that and use your tools, use what you have?
Well, pardon me. Let me tell you what the first thought I had. It's the insecurity that came in. It was. I got to double check the time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we're good. No, the first thought was what happens if he goes on the podcast and the website, doesn't like any of the work I do, finds I'm weird, or she thinks I'm weird for coming up to her and talking to her. Mm-hmm. Like a good example is like the other day I went to Publix. I'm really into redheads, and
really,
yeah, but like the light skin and the.
Oh, you kind of like the Irish.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like I like the Irish redhead.
Well, you told me you're from New York. Did you grow up with a lot of Irish kids?
No, actually, no. In Brooklyn, where I grew up at Flatbush and Avenue J, I went to a Catholic school. It was mixed, so we had black, we had white, we had
Irish.
Irish. So it was primarily mixed, and where we, the building where we lived at was primarily Indian and Middle Eastern. That part of the neighborhood, and then you had blacks down the road, and it was a pretty good heterogeneous neighborhood.
Yeah, you were yeah, that was great. You had like all the United Nations happening right
actually,
there.
Put your mouth a little bit that way, cause the mic. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't know. Just like when I grew up, I just got more interested in white women, and I think specifically are the Irish with the red hair, or women with the white skin, blue or green eyes with the dark hair, like the raven black hair.
So
I have no idea where that came from.
So you really prefer the redhead
or the raven black hair?
Raven black hair.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting, because as you were talking about that, I was kind of picking up on when you said, you grew up in more of an Indian, Middle Eastern. Mm-hmm. Is India your culture?
No, I'm Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican, really?
Yeah, it's just the building we lived in.
It was just the building that you lived in. Yeah,
because the apartment building we lived in was primarily Middle Eastern and Indian people, but also the neighborhood was black and white. Primarily, I think a little bit more black than white, but it was a very, especially the Catholic school I went to, like it was a very mixed group of population. Yeah.
So yeah, I take your point. Redheads are very rare. That may be another part of the problem. It's like, redheads are only like 2% of the population or something. But you do like raven, dark hair. Mm-hmm. So that's that kind of opens up your options right there. And of course, we do have our preferences about what we're attracted to and what we're not attracted to.
Well, I was always wondering where that came from.
So, that could have been a past life thing, for those that do, believe in past lives and that kind of thing. Yeah, I'm kind of getting that may be where that's coming from.
So what is a past life?
So a past life is our souls have been around for quite a long time. And so we have these experiences that, from other lives. Mm-hmm. Some people believe in it. Some people don't believe in it. And in the Christian faith, they look at it. And I was raised Southern Baptist, so very, very Christian. Mm-hmm. But I remember having a past life regression done on me, where I actually had a life where I was a Nazarene, and I was actually traveling with Jesus. I was just with the group. He had a big group that went with him, including the disciples, but all these people that would travel with him, and that they were doing healing and helping people and all that. And it was very, very vivid and very clear in this past life regression that I had that experience. So that's why I have an affinity in this life towards, I was raised in the South. I'm born in the South. But I have an affinity towards Middle Eastern food. I love it. As a matter of fact, I'm going Friday to eat Middle Eastern food. It just really, and I love that whole culture. I love the way that they are. And even though I was born in Alabama, for God's sake, that's not like the Middle Eastern capital of anything, but these past lives, it's kind of like your soul when we die, it goes back to creator source or wherever you want to call that. And then God comes through with another, spoons up your soul and is like putting it into another life. And they say that we make the choices, we choose our parents, we choose who those are. I don't do that through hypnosis. The process I use is called soul realignment. And it's reading people's Akashic records, which is a record of your soul. And what comes through in that is what are the blocks and the restrictions that your soul has picked up along its way. Just like that young lady had picked up those trapped emotions. This is kind of taking it down another layer. So it's about how far down the rabbit hole do people want to go when they work with me. We can just do, with them sitting here talking with me. I'm also a life coach. So I can just sit here and I can talk with them using NLP, using, where they can access their subconscious mind, to help them make decisions and to move forward more effectively. Or we can actually do the hypnosis where we're gathering information. How do they want to be when they leave? Give them those suggestions when they're in a very relaxed state. Or I can read their Akashic records, and those sessions generally take about 2 hours. A lot of the work is done ahead of time so that I look at what has been going on with your soul and what are the blocks there for your soul. And usually it happened in a lifetime where something happened. So for instance, I worked with someone who had joined a religious organization back in a lifetime, like 12 lifetimes ago. And they had joined a religious organization in which there was a lot of persecution going on. So what they learned in that lifetime was they took on a vow of silence, because it was like, people will kill you for this. So they took a vow of silence, and it was causing them in this lifetime to stay with that vow of silence. So they couldn't speak their truth. They couldn't live their passion. They couldn't find their purpose because they were afraid to speak. And it carries through. Because we learned, those lessons are pretty traumatic, and we learn those lessons. So some people want to explore past lives. Some people are not interested in it. I tell people, if you didn't like it in that past life, why are you dragging it into this one, kind of thing. But there's lots of different, like I said, it's like layers of an onion, and we just peel them back. Because the whole idea is, and when you asked earlier about, well, what about, having a traumatic, remembering something and having a trauma around it. That's not the intention behind this. All of my work is intended that it flows with grace and ease and aligns to the person's highest potential, their highest purpose, and to their highest good. And it's very important that we live our lives from our intentions. What do we intentionally want? And again, remembering I said, people can tell you what they don't want, but they really have a hard time telling you what they do want. And so once you can get people telling you what they do want and living from that, living from a place of conscious intent is the highest level that you can live from. So that you are setting your intentions, you are aligning to those and knowing what works good and best for you using your subconscious mind. So I wanted to show you just a little tool. And I used this with a 13-year-old little boy who was having a problem looking people in the face, looking them in the eyes.
Yeah.
He was very shy, didn't want to talk, and it was really creating problems in his school and sports and all of that. So we basically, of course, have two eyes. And this is based on the work of a brilliant guy from England. And what he discovered working with people for 40 years is that we have what we call an essence eye, and we have a personal history eye. The essence eye is reflecting who you are, your soul, who you are at your essence, your essential self, the real you. And it's also tied to your subconscious, by the way. So your essence eye is going to be more open, rounder, and look more innocent. That's your essential eye. Generally speaking, most people are right-handed. Your essence eye is going to be the opposite on the other side. If you're right-handed, your left eye is going to be your essential eye. The other eye for right-handers, their right eye, is their personal history eye. It's like where everything has been coded that you've experienced. So the personal history eye can look sadder, meaner, angrier, more hurt, more closed. And so I was going to look it up on my phone and see if I could show you, but you can look at people and you can tell when you look at their eye. I tell people, when you're first talking to someone, talk to their left eye, because most people are right-handed, and their essence eye is going to be their opposite eye, so their left eye. So you want to talk to that eye when you want them to when you want to get along, when you want them to work with you, when you want peace, when you want to work with each other. But if you want to let them know, I'm not taking your stuff, I'm not going to let you disrespect me, like say you're having a problem with them or whatever, then you want to switch over and talk to their personal history eye. So an example of that is I had a guy come out to my property, and I had already given him some money and had him come out to do some tree work, which can get expensive. Trees are expensive to remove. I mean, we're maybe in the wrong business. Maybe we just go take down trees. Yeah, I know, right? And so I had paid him, but he would come out, do a little bit of work, and he wasn't getting it done. So every time I was talking with him, I was looking at him in his essence eye. And I thought that we were getting along or whatever, and then it just got to where he wasn't finishing the work, he wasn't doing the work. So one day, I got in my car, drove to where he was, and I got out of the car, and I looked him in the personal history eye, and I said, I want the work finished now. And it was done that afternoon.
Well, was it the personal history or was it you just being demanding, like, I paid you?
It could have been both, but I find that it's really, really effective with people. So what I tell children, because usually they have this problem, it's encoded in a very young age where they don't feel socially comfortable or whatever. I told him, I said, okay, so most people, you're going to look at their left eye. If you don't see that it's more open and it's more round, then I want you to go and I want you to look over at the other eye to see if you can see it there, because I happen to be left-handed, so my essence eye is my right eye, and my personal history eye is my left eye. And you can look at people. There were people. Who was I? I was looking at somebody recently that was on TV. You want to keep your you don't want to smile or anything, because that tends to bring out essence in both eyes. So you just want to have a very neutral face when someone is looking at you, and then you try to identify which eye. So what I told him as a 13-year-old, I said, you're going to see one eye is innocent and one eye looks guilty. And he came back as we were working together over several weeks. He came back and he goes, you are so right. People have an innocent eye and they have a guilty eye. So I said, so now you know, if anybody's bullying you, you look at their guilty eye. And you let them know, I'm not putting up with this. But if you want to, like you're making a real deep connection with someone, you want to look at their essence eye. So that's what I was going to give you. So could you just be curious about that, Frank? Could you, as you go out and talking to people, really be looking them in the eyes and see which is the essence eye?
I just noticed our habit. I noticed when you were talking about, I saw myself doing it. I constantly look at people's right eye.
Interesting. So you're looking at their personal history eye for the most part.
I thought you said the left eye was
The left eye is the essence.
Okay.
But if you're talking to their personal history eye, they think you're mad at them.
Oh.
That's what's happening. Oh, we may have just fixed the whole problem. Maybe you just need to be talking to more people's left eye, because 80% of the people on the planet are right-handed.
Yeah.
So 80% are it was even more than that. When I was born, it was like 90%. I think that left-handers are an evolutionary change that we're making, because left-handers are ruled by the subconscious, by the right hemisphere. So think about it. Over time, all this history that we've been going through, we needed the right-handed people that were using their logical mind, because we had to build civilizations. Rome and Greece and all of that. Most people were right-handed, but now they say going forward that empathy and using the not logical, the subconscious mind, the right hemisphere, which is where empathy is housed, is that's going to be very, very important going forward. And I think that we're seeing that even on the world stage. It's like like I look at Canada. I think that Justin Trudeau is like one of the most empathic people that are on the planet. And he exhibits that. They say he gets out and he goes canoeing and stuff, and he'll pull up to people's docks and sit there and talk to them. He's not worried about security around him or anything like that. He's just out connecting with the people. And then you have people that are not so empathic, who they don't care about other people. I don't care how you feel. It's all about me, me, me. And so that's the shift that we're making, because on a certain level we all have a little bit of narcissism. But it's a subjective experience. Your life is your life.
Yes.
My life is my life. But it's a very what science is showing us that going forward is that empathy is going to be very, very important. And so I think that if you could just make that one shift and just start talking to people's left eyes and just see what shifts, see what you notice that shifts. Did you really notice that you usually speak to people's right eye? Because if you've been...
I noticed it for a while, but like I didn't really...
Are you left-handed or right-handed?
Right-handed.
You're right-handed. So your essence eye is your left eye.
Okay.
And you can see the difference. I was gonna. There was a picture of Sarah Huckabee Sanders. The president's press secretary. And there was one situation where she was kind of making a face, but it was like her left eye was massive, and her right eye, when you looked at that right eye, it was like, ooh, I don't want to mess with that person, because you can see it. That eye in that particular picture looked exceptionally mean.
Yeah.
Her left eye was really open, but the right eye was like glaring, like
sneering.
Yeah. And so there, you can just look at people's pictures. Who was that person that I was looking at recently? And I was like, wow, you could really see it on them. I'll think of it. But anyway, it's a little tool to use if you are uncomfortable meeting strangers or whatever. I talk to everybody's left eye first. I look to see if I see the essence there. If I don't see it, then I'm going to go to the other eye and then hopefully see it there. The only ones that, would you not really have like an essence eye would be like sociopaths like Charles Manson or Ted Bundy or something like that. And by the way, those are also the people that cannot be hypnotized. Sociopaths cannot be hypnotized.
Why is that?
Just the way that their brain is wired, I guess. I wouldn't want to hypnotize. I wouldn't even want to work with one. But, it's like, yeah, no, you can go away now. But it's just about the way that their brain is wired, I guess. So they really can't let go. Hypnosis is really about a very relaxed state. And so sometimes those people have a really difficult time letting go because of the... whatever it is that's going on in their mind. But again, like I said, I wouldn't want to work with them. But you can just look at people and look at them and notice which eye is more open, which eye is more closed. And when we're hypnotizing people, you do want to talk to their essential eye, to their essence eye. You don't necessarily want to talk to the personal history one, because that's where you're trying to get that agreement, where you're trying to meet them. So that's just a little tool that people can use when they're uncomfortable talking to people. And you'll be amazed at how you really can connect with them when you're talking to that eye. So it'll be an interesting experiment for you to try.
I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to go to the next part of the interview. For everyone that's a new listener, and for the people who are returning, thank you. This part of the interview is where I ask interpersonal questions. The reason why I ask these questions to my guests is because the people I have on the show, they come from different mindsets, and they come from different walks of life, different personalities, and you may not agree with some of them, and you may agree with some of them, but the whole purpose behind this podcast is that I think it's really important, especially today's world, because we're talking about empathy, that even if you disagree with a person, that you sit down and try to get to know the person.
Mm.
Because you can still relate to another person on a different level. So these questions are fun. Some of them are serious, but they're supposed to show another side to a person. So the first one is always a fun one. Given the choice of anyone in the world from any time period, who would you want as a dinner guest and why?
Oh, wow. That's a really great question. And you know who immediately popped into my head was Cleopatra.
Oh, why?
Well, I'm fascinated by the fact that in that ancient time, she was a woman and she was a ruler.
Mm-hmm.
So she was actually doing a man's job at a time when that wasn't really the way of the world. So I would just want to, find, and they said that she was a very fair ruler. So, just to kind of, talk with her to see, but what were the challenges? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Just to have dinner with her, I think that would be fascinating.
Cleopatra. That's the first one I heard for Cleopatra. What would constitute a perfect day for you?
Oh, that's a great question. In coaching, we use that one. Are you sure you're not a coach?
No.
Yeah, we ask people, tell us what your ideal day is. And so truthfully, my ideal day is working with clients. I love what I do. It's all I want to do. If I don't have any clients in a day, I don't feel good. So it really is working with people, getting to know them and helping them let go of anything that no longer serves them so that they can move forward in their life in a more purposeful way that's more aligned with who they truly are at their core.
Okay. Sounds like a good one. If you could change anything about the way you were raised, what would it be?
If I could change anything about the way I was raised, what would it be? So if I could change anything, I think that it would be that I was consulted more as to what my thoughts were or my preferences were. Because, as children, you kind of have to move around. I remember my parents moved from one part of town to another when I was in the 5th grade, and I announced to my parents that I was staying in our old house because I was not changing schools. And we weren't given an option. So, I know sometimes that's not possible for children or whatever, but I would have liked to have had more autonomy, I think.
Tell your parents, no.
Yeah.
No.
Say no.
Do you have a secret hunch on the way you will die?
Do I have a secret hunch on the way that I will die? Actually, that is so fascinating because knock on wood, I just get that it's going to kind of be like I just kind of float away. It's not going to be anything traumatic. It's not going to be whatever. It's just like, okay,
peaceful.
I'm just peaceful, kind of done.
It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Next. What's the next? Well, you remember Steve Jobs, right? When he passed, did you hear what?
No.
Do you know what his last words were?
No.
Wow. 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 It was just amazing, whatever it was that he was seeing.
I wonder if he was taking LSD for the last time.
I know, right?
Well, do one more before I go.
Exactly.
If you wake up tomorrow and gain any power or ability, what would it be and why?
If I wake up tomorrow and I could have any power or ability, what would it be and why? Wow, that is a fascinating question. If I could wake up tomorrow and have any power or ability, what would it be? It would be to be able to, is the right word teleporting? Like you remember in Star Trek how you could...
Teleporting.
Yeah, you could just you could go to that planet or you could show up on this other side of the world. I think that would be absolutely the most amazing power to have. Because then you could just go wherever you wanted to go. Yeah.
I remember reading that some scientists actually, it was a long time ago, they're able to transport an atom or a quark, so something to the smallest level they're able to do it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I think that was it. Yeah, that's
exactly.
it. Yeah, that's about it. That's all we can do.
There you go.
What conspiracy theories do you believe in?
What conspiracy theories? And that's a real interesting question, especially in the political environment that we're in right now. As somebody who reads energy and reads other people's energy, I have to say, I really don't buy into conspiracy theories.
Really?
Yeah, I just don't, because I can read the energy of it. And if it's a conspiracy, there's really no oomph to that. It's either true or it's not true. And so I literally will ask my subconscious, is that true? So I don't really buy into those conspiracy theories because, it's real interesting. I keep a picture on my phone. And in case for those, I don't know if it's okay to say this, but in case for those, I'm not a real Trump fan, but there's a picture of him upstanding in front of people. And it says, it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled.
It's easier to fool people
than to convince them that they have been fooled.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So, and I think that that's where those conspiracy theories come in. It's about fooling people, and I really am all about getting to the truth and speaking truth to power. I think is going to be very, very important as we go forward. So for the conspiracy theories, no, I really don't buy into them. And by the way, that's something that can actually get integrated into your soul, are conspiracy theories. And you carry them from lifetime to lifetime. And that's the whole idea behind clearing your soul, is so that you're not carrying those. So I used to, but since I've gone through soul clearing, I don't carry those conspiracy theories anymore. My soul just looks at it and goes, yeah, no.
No.
That's
bullshit.
Yeah, totally.
All right. When was the first time you fell in love, and how did it happen?
When was the first time I fell in love? And how did it happen? Oh, well, that one's real easy. The first time I fell in love was when I was a baby.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I fell in love with my parents, especially my dad.
Somebody else, I forgot which episode, somebody else said the same thing. Like, first time was falling in love with their parents.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that was really the first time. Yeah, I can say that. I mean, because I just absolutely, I just thought my dad was like, that was it. I mean, I love my mom, but there was just, I don't know, there just felt an affinity towards my dad. And, yeah, I can clearly remember that. And I was really little. I mean, like 2 years old. And I can remember sitting there going, I love my dad.
Hey, Daddy.
As a little kid.
What was the most terrifying moment in your life?
The most terrifying moment in my life was actually, and it also precipitated a lot of panic attacks after that. The most terrifying time of my life is when I found out I could not have children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was like, you really question your existence and your purpose. You're like, but that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to grow up, get married, have children. And I can remember when the surgeon came in and told me, he goes, your chances of getting pregnant are 0. And I lost it. That was the most terrified I ever was, because it pushed it. It started me questioning, why am I here? So there's no point in going on. You can't have kids, so why are you here? Fortunately, I found this work, and now I consider all of my clients or the people I work with, they're my family, they're my kids. I work with a lot of younger people. Those are my kids. So I have a lot of kids now. But then at that time, I was in my 20s, and I think I told you, I went through all that with agoraphobia, and the empathy and picking up on other people. And I had gotten over that, and then was, married, having trying to have children.
And you got hit with that.
And then got hit with that, and then I flipped back into it. Like, yeah, so, it really is the hypnosis, all of the work that I've done over these many, many years that, has brought me to where I am today. And, good or bad, Now I'm sitting there and I'm going, yeah, I have a lot of friends now who have kids and grandkids, and they're all living with her or with them. It's like those kids don't go away. I'm like, oh, I would have wanted to have had a kid, and then they grew up and they, went out on their own.
Yeah.
So good or bad, that's kind of how you have to look at it. Plus, I have 2 sisters and a brother, and they had all, they all had kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I could just rent a kid.
I'll take you for a day.
And it was great, Frank, because I didn't have to worry about it when they were sick or they weren't doing their homework or doing all that.
There you go.
And I could get back on my brother and sisters by, sugaring them up, getting them really hopped up on some sugar and sending them home. And like, you remember when you did this to me when we were kids? Well, here's your kid back. And they're all sugared up and ready to go. So it was a lot of fun. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so that was probably, that's an interesting question. Good question.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had a spiritual or profound experience?
Oh, yeah, I've had a lot of those. Yeah. Spiritual or profound experiences?
Yes.
So you remember I told you, about you can learn how to read energy and just like the animals do, just like dogs do. You can learn how to read that energy. You can also learn how to connect with them. And I just do this as an aside. I do it for, I'm in this wonderful group of coaches, and I do this as an aside, but if they have a sick animal or something like that, I can actually communicate with the animal just by reading the animal's energy. So one of the most profound experiences I had, I go to a ranch in Montana every July. We're studying this amazing energy work that's being used everywhere at the Mayo Clinic up in Rochester, Minnesota. They're not using it here yet, but they use it up in Rochester, Minnesota. It's this amazing energy work, and we work with horses when we're up there because horses are very empathic as well. And so there were a bunch of us at this ranch.
Was it called bovine therapy, something like that? Or not bovine,
equine,
yeah. There we go.
Equine therapy, yeah. And I literally bought a place here on the north side that has some acreage because eventually I want to put in horses over there so I can take people and let people work with the horses, because a horse will let you know within 2 minutes what is going on with that person. So we were at this ranch, and a friend of mine had come from California and brought her whole family, and she had a 9-year-old little girl with me, and we were in the pasture, and this is a 160-acre ranch, so it's pretty big. And it's hilly because it's in Montana. And so the 9-year-old was like, I want to go down there. And it was about probably 1,000 feet away, 3 football fields or whatever. You could see about 30 horses that were down there. And I said, I'll take you down there. And my friend or mom, they were going to stay back, and they were up at an elevation so they could see us as we were walking down towards the horses. And so as we're walking, I'm holding the little girl's hand, and I said, do you want to know how I connect with the horses? And she was like, yeah. And so I said, okay, so let's stop for a minute. We stopped walking, and I said, close your eyes. And I said, above your head, I want you to imagine that there's a horse. And you can make that any color horse, any kind of horse, but just imagine that horse is just over your head. And now I want you to connect your heart. Just imagine that you have this ribbon of light coming from your heart up to that horse. And so we did that, and then we started walking again. And just as soon as we started walking, every single one of those horses' heads snapped up, and they came stampeding towards us. And her mother was like up on a ridge looking down on it, kind of freaking out. I could feel her, and I was like, oh God. And so I took the little girl's hand, and I said, just stand here next to me. And those horses came thundering towards us, and then they just parted and went into a circle around us. And it was like they were taking us into the herd. So that was such a profound experience because we were so connected with those horses. And a horse will let you know what is going on with you in about 2 minutes. Which is, that's being an empath off the chart, that they can tell you what's going on a very deep, deep level. So that was a profound spiritual experience, definitely.
I love animals, too.
You do?
Yeah,
What's your favorite animal?
See, it depends. Like on something that lives in the ocean, I love octopuses or cephalopods because they're really interesting.
Yeah.
dogs, owls.
Mm.
So yeah, be those three.
Awesome.
Let's see. Is there something you dreamed of doing for a long time? Why have you done it? Why haven't you done it yet?
Is there something that I've been dreaming? Is there something I've dreamed of doing
Yes.
for a long time, but I haven't done it?
Yes.
Is there something I've dreamed of doing, but I haven't done it? Gosh, Frank, I'm going to have to say no, because I think that I've dreamed this life that I'm living right now into existence. My degree is in institutional finance. I used to be in the financial services industry. This is about as far off that beaten track. You know, my dad's like, really? You got a bachelor's in institutional finance and now you're off like help working with people's minds? And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. And, you know, it was just something that I had dreamed about because when I originally went to college, I wanted to be a psychologist and my dad talked me out of it. He said, get a business degree. And actually, now that I look at it, I was like, he's right. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're a doctor or a therapist or whatever, if you don't know how to do business, you're not in business.
Yeah. Yep, I kind of learned that the hard way.
Yeah, right. Well, because we're all, you know, we want to go and do the, you know, underwater basket weaving or whatever. You know, it's like, oh, I love doing this. I want to do this. But having that business sense can go a long way towards helping you in whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, my thing is I wish they taught that in high school or college. Like, it doesn't have to be like a 4-year degree. It just could be like two semesters of like, okay, this is how you taxes, that stuff, like the important stuff, so that way you have a better have a better grasp of what's going on.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be an expert, but you're knowledgeable.
Yeah, and for all you young people out there, be sure and learn how to code. Coding is going to be the way of the future. So, yeah.
Coding.
Yeah, coding. I mean, those are where the jobs are going to be opening up in artificial intelligence and all that kind of stuff. So I would encourage any young people out there who are thinking about what they want to do, that's really the way to go. Or to do something like what I'm doing, because the high-tech, high-pay jobs, they're really not in this country anymore because they can outsource those high-tech jobs to countries that they don't have to pay as much.
Yep.
This is a very low-tech job that I do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's really no technology. It's all just reading energy and using your subconscious mind. That's very low tech, but it does take quite a bit of time. Some people are just natural at it, but anybody can learn to do it. Anybody can learn to read energy.
Yeah, my thing is like, it's not, I don't use the term energy, but I use story because I'm reluctant to say, but I am a storyteller. I love stories. One day I hope to become a master storyteller like Stephen King or Neil Gaiman or famous comedians like Dave Chappelle. Think about it, musicians, comedians, artists are all storytellers.
Totally.
There's different mediums of storytelling.
Well, and you know, in hypnosis, that's one of the things I tell people is a lot of times when I'm doing hypnosis on them, I am telling them stories. Mm-hmm. Because, well, think about fairy tales. We would tell children fairy tales when they were little, but those fairy tales actually carried meaning for their subconscious mind. So Goldilocks and the Three Bears was about a little girl with blonde hair and there were 3 bears, but it was really to teach children that you just don't go into somebody's house and start using their things. You don't sleep in their bed, you don't eat their food,
you don't break in.
You don't break in. You don't break in. But it was to teach their subconscious mind that. Or Hansel and Gretel was to teach children you don't go off with someone when they're offering you sweets and go into their house because you could get get hurt. So that's the whole idea behind telling stories, and that's awesome to know that that's what you want to eventually do, because you are collecting a lot of different stories. You are learning a lot of different stories. You have your own story to tell. And, yeah, I applaud that. Being a master storyteller, that's what it's all about. And think about back in the day when people were, even when we were like living very primitive, like cave people. what the guys do. They went off hunting during the day, and then they came back, and around the campfire at night, they're telling the story about, I killed it, and it was this big, and, you know.
You were there. You saw it.
I was there. But they had to tell everybody in the tribe, or in the, you know, in their clan, like, here's the story of what happened today, and everybody's like, oh yeah, you know. And so it really was about storytelling, because we didn't have TV. Now we use TV to tell us stories. But what if we had more of that one-on-one interaction, because we are kind of going into our devices, into our phones and into our computers, and we're kind of losing that connection. So I think it's really about storytelling kind of brings us back to being connected. So keep it up. Mm-hmm. I'm voting for you.
Thank you. All right. 2 more questions, and that'll be it. What is your most treasured memory?
My most treasured memory?
Mm-hmm.
What is my most treasured memory? Wow, that is a really great question. My most treasured memory. God, there's just so many. And I would have to say it was probably working with a client that was having a lot of difficulty. Oh, I know one. A treasured memory. I had somebody who did have kind of an agoraphobic thing going on, and claustrophobia, and just completely terrified to go outside. She couldn't even, and she even wanted to go on, she couldn't even go in their camper. They had one of those big campers, you know, big RVs. She couldn't even go in that because she felt so claustrophobic. And so her husband would go on trips without her, and she was like missing out. And I think my most treasured memory is the day that she called me and they were on the road, and she's like, I'm so happy, and this is so comfortable, and I love it. So I really think it's just my most treasured memories are knowing that I make a difference in somebody's life.
Oh, that's good. All right, this is the last question, and this is a question I ask everyone. It's a 2-part question, and it's a very serious question.
Okay.
What is the worst thing you have ever done in your life, and what is the best thing you ever done in your life?
Wow. The worst thing I've ever done in my life. The worst thing I've ever done, I'm going to be straight up honest, was being out of energetic integrity and having an affair.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And it never ends well for people. In case any of you out there are thinking that God is going to bring you another woman's husband, let me tell you, that never will happen.
What? Say that again?
I said, if anybody out there thinks that God will bring you another woman's husband to be your soulmate, it's not. There are too many people out there. Go get somebody else. So yeah, and that was at a much younger age. So I will say that. That was probably that definitely was the worst thing. I was not in energetic integrity at all.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 30.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's been 31 years ago. So you live and you learn. And then, you know, I believe that everything happens for a reason. I do believe that. And sometimes these situations that are not ideal come along for a reason. It's to wake us up. And I think that that's really when I started waking up. Because otherwise, you know, the truth of the matter is, and what I tell people is most everyone is walking around in a hypnotic trance. Everybody's already hypnotized. My job is to dehypnotize them and to get them to come back to the essence of who they are, to the core of who they are. And so, yeah, being out of energetic integrity like that, that's the worst thing that I ever did, for sure. The best thing? What's the best thing that I ever did? The best thing I ever did. The best thing I ever did was choosing to learn how to set boundaries. Healthy boundaries.
Yeah, it's always good to say no. It's nothing wrong with saying no.
Absolutely. So I think really learning how to set healthy boundaries is the best thing that I ever did. It increases your value to your work and to the world and what you're doing. And um, it definitely makes you know that you can rely on yourself, that you can trust yourself, to have confidence that the decisions that you are making are only aligning to your highest good.
Mm-hmm.
So having healthy boundaries, and a lot of times these days people don't have healthy boundaries, and it's also why they can get that Manchurian candidate thing going on, because you're taking all these suggestions and you're just I show people when they're in my office, I have them think about somebody that they really, really like, and they see how strong it makes them. And then I have them think about somebody that they can't stand, and they see how it weakens them. And then I teach them a technique so that they can still think about somebody that they don't really like, but it never weakens them. It makes them bulletproof. So what I like to say is I make my clients bulletproof because change is happening out there all the time. It's going to continue to change. It's going to accelerate in how quickly it's changing, and that can be very stressful. So I want my clients to feel bulletproof, that no matter what is going on around them, that they are staying in their core of peace, that they are connected with their subconscious mind, that their consciousness and their subconscious are aligned, so that as they're navigating that change, that they can do so with an ease and a grace, and that they realize the optimal outcome, the optimal result that they're wanting to get. So I think that's probably the best thing.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for doing the episode. It was
Thank you.
fun, very insightful. Why don't you tell everyone how to get in contact with you if they want
Sure.
to get some of your services?
Sure, thank you. So, Susan Watson, my company is Affiliated Hypnosis Services, and I am here in Jacksonville, Florida. You can find me at www.affiliatedhypnosis.com. That's AffiliatedHypnosis.com. And you can contact me through there very easily. So if anyone wants to make a change or live their best life, I'm here and ready to facilitate that and help them tap into their subconscious mind.
Okay. And I will put that information on the episode profile description. So if you guys want to find it, you can also look at the description for the website. Thank you again for doing this.
Thank you.
I want to remind everyone to check out the website. It has some interesting articles, short stories, poems, because I am that sappy. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in next time. And thank you guys for listening.